Truly redefining the future. The next session is all titled Three Tech Trends India's IT Industry is Betting On. To help us understand the top 3 to 4 tech trends like AI, cloud computing, 5G, cybersecurity, which will further help India to lead in the new normal, please welcome CP Gurnani, CEO Tech Mahindra, and the chair for the session is Chandra Srikanth, editor, Tech Startup and New Economy Money Control. CP Gurnani, popularly known as CP within his peer group, is the managing director and the chief executive officer of Tech Mahindra. An accomplished business leader, CP played a pivotal role in Tech Mahindra's transformation journey and one of the biggest turnarounds of Indian corporate history, the acquisition and merger of Satyam. Chandra has over a decade's experience covering business technology, startups, and entrepreneurship for India's biggest media houses. She reports on corporate India, technology, and has consistently cracked big sectoral developments and interviewed top CEOs. The stage is all yours, Chandra. Take it away.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session, a live session at the NTLF. It's been a fantastic day so far, and the scale and scope of the event has been unprecedented. Mr. Gurnani, welcome to this edition of NTLF, NASScom Technology and Leadership Forum. Very nice to have you, sir. Welcome to the event.
Good evening, Chandra, and good evening to all the delegates. Very, very lively and a very excellent session, particularly, having this session blessed by the Prime Minister of India, I think is in a way a testimonial that how important this session, the whole NTLF is to India Incorporated, and more importantly, that our role on the global scale is being appreciated.
Oh, absolutely. And Mr. Gurnani, you've actually given me my cue for my question, because this session is going to have a focus on the three important trends that the Indian IT industry is betting on, the three important game changers, technologies, trends that the industry is betting on. And the Prime Minister actually set the tone for it today when he spoke about the contribution of the Indian IT industry, how it's left a global footprint, but he also spoke about how it's now time for the Indian IT industry to really make for India, harness the potential here. And Mr. Gurnani, we are really seeing that happen. Technology, in a sense, has become all pervasive. The number of internet users have gone up. You have edtech, agri-tech, fintech. Technology is touching every aspect of our lives. This is a new India. How can the industry really harness its potential? How can it be an enabler? If that's the first big thing that you would like to talk to us about.
I think, Chandra, you touched a very good point, because what we are discussing at the moment is not the 200 billion exports of technology, but it is really the India story. And today, not only Prime Minister, but all of us have realized that technology today is impacting markets, makers, which could be manufacturers, which could be product companies that we will spin off, or it could be the platform. And similarly, it is impacting the men. And men here is, I'm just trying to make it market makers and the men, just to drive home a point that Indian consumer has embraced digital technologies, and now it is the turn of the Indian companies to make sure that they are digitally ahead of the game.
Right.
That this pandemic has proven that the technology at home is potentially far superior than the technology at the workplace. What this has also proven is that even government realizes that for them to function, they need to now adopt digital workflow. So I personally believe that digital marketplace, thanks to the fintech boom, thanks to the the WhatsApp and the Paytms and the Googles of this world, thanks to Jio and Airtel. We all know that now we survived almost 12 months or 11 months of the pandemic by being always connected, by being able to do our jobs, not because it was compute from home, it was compute anywhere. So 500 million internet subscribers, one of the largest and the fastest growing digital consumer market, clearly a manufacturing base. We have seen how Apple moved their manufacturing to India, the only real base outside. We have seen Tesla announcing. So my point is very simple, that India will take a leapfrog thanks to the technology. India will take a leapfrog because we all realize that our workforce and manufacturing or products will have to be a lot more digitally enabled.
Right. Mr. Gurnani, actually, you've broken it down really well. Market makers and, men or talent, we will come to that later. You've touched upon the market point first, how it's a huge opportunity here. Let me come to the makers. You did touch upon Apple. It's not just Apple. Just yesterday, Amazon announced its first ever manufacturing line in India. There is, of course, constant buzz about Tesla coming to India. So, this will also require a strong digital infrastructure. What opportunities do you see here? Is 5G going to be the next game changer? Is cloud going to be the next game changer? Even the Prime Minister today said the government has a huge target with respect to fiber optic network, but we really need the IT industry to back us up here when it comes to the digital infrastructure, when it comes to creating user-friendly products for the last mile. So is this going to be the next big mega trend in terms of helping or being the digital backbone for India, which wants to now be a global manufacturing hub for some of the world's biggest companies?
So Chandra, I hope we have more time than what you have budgeted, but I can only tell you is that, again, I'm going to just give you three parts to any equation. One is, if India Incorporated has to succeed, they have to succeed, number one, on focusing on human experience management. In Tech Mahindra, we call it humanics. The reason we call it humanics is because whatever technology that I use, if I don't focus on design, style, and user interfaces, I am not making it easy for adoption. Number two is follow the data. Because the reality is all this consumption increase creates structured, unstructured data, creates compute capabilities, needs compute capabilities, which will eventually lead to quantum computing. And number third is whether we store the data, when I'm following the data, whether I store the data on the cloud or whether I store it in the server farms. Ultimately, what I am talking about is a very fast shift of data managed by machine learning and artificial intelligence and finding its usage or availability through the cloud. So when you look at all of this, and then the third part to this is cybersecurity.
Right.
So if you look at human experience management, if you look at the computer design labs or the computer design studios, I think there is a long way to go. Number two, data to cloud. Only cloud is considered a $600 billion market.
And we've barely scratched the surface.
So we are still, we have read the NASSCOM report, which says we will need 3.5 million jobs in cybersecurity. So my own submission here is that whether it is marketplace whether it is manufacturing or when we start discussing the manufacturing, it is not important. Tesla is coming or not. Tesla is definitely going to come. They're not going to miss out on 1.3 billion people. They are bound to come here. It's a more important is to realize 40% of the Tesla car is a software. 40% of a Tesla car can be reconfigured the next day. It is the software as a service. If you want air conditioning on your back seat, you need to pay $300 to get that software enabled. I think the culture here is we need to adopt that human experience management where we can bundle or unbundle the service. So to me, I'm excited about the potential for India, and I think the blueprint is right available to us, and that is where the third lever, the skilled manpower, comes in.
Right. I was just going to come to that, but those are fascinating facts that you presented, Mr. Gurnani, on the software aspect behind automotive, as well as the follow the data, as you so eloquently pointed out. The third part of the puzzle, you know, we've covered markets, we've covered makers. Now comes men, women, talent, skill. Now, the same NASScom strategic review report that you quoted, you know, they said 1 out of every 4 IT employees today are digitally skilled, which means out of 4.6 million, we have over 1 million workforce who have digital skills. It's an enviable kind of number to have. But is that enough? How many, you know, digitally skilled employees will we potentially need? How do we address this gap? That's the conundrum I'm going to present to you as the third mega trend.
So I remember reading a report, and I know even I personally made that statement to one of the news agencies. We create degrees, but we don't create employable people.
I think that grabbed a lot of headlines, Mr. Gurnani.
That is true, Chandra. The other report said educated but not skilled. So I don't want to go into the reasons. That's why I said whenever you budget more time, I'm happy to communicate even more. But I think there is a desire. NASScom has tried to establish by calling it a future skills platform. I was the chairman that time when we launched this future skills platform, but I was talking to a few people this morning on the NASScom panel, and I said no point in calling it future skills program. It is a current skills program. To me, the future skills is when we can create not the 4 or 5 million jobs that we are discussing today, when we can put a 40 to 50 million jobs. Because my belief is if we become the skill factory of the world, if we choose to focus on the men, the potential is for us to create 40 to 50 million jobs. And it is not that some work will not become obsolete, but that is really the business. When you are able to anticipate where the new jobs of the future will be, where the skill intensity is required, and how do you create a method where you become a supplier to the world because you have everything. You is the wrong word, we have everything going for us. Those 800 universities, those online programs, those 600 edtechs that are coming in today, those edtechs which have got valued at multi-billion dollars, I think only shows that India has the appetite, and we need to now create a framework where we create jobs, we create skilled people who will help us serve the markets.
So if I were to present a 21-year-old who's just graduated, he wants a job from Mr. Gurnani, what are the 2 or 3 top things that you will look for youngsters, for recruiters listening to us live?
I think this is really what we're trying to do at Mahindra University. It doesn't matter which subject in Mahindra University they will end up studying. They could be studying economics, history, or they could be studying engineering. When you plot the curve for the next decade or the next 5 years, you do realize that those three parts that we discussed, number one is a digital marketplace. That means you understand fintech ultimately is a platform which enables a finance transaction. Health tech is a platform which enables a consumer and a doctor to get together. So I actually draw a framework more to help a 21-year-old understand where the jobs are being created. The framework, I call it a quadrant. Number one, I say is the use cases. That means you need to understand some domain or some knowledge of that use case. It could be a smart city, it could be a smart hospital, it could be a smart education hub. The second box I create is what I call as fiduciary. That means we're dealing with medical records, we're dealing with data. We need to respect the laws of the market. We need to understand what GPS really means, what the geostationary reporting means, and what responsibility it imposes on you. Number third is the technology, because technology is an enabler. It could be AI, it could be quantum computing. And number fourth is the talent. A talent which will harness the technology, which respects the fiduciary, and which can create a solution or a use case, I think is a talent that will own the world.
Right. Winding down to the last 4 minutes, sir. So we discussed the trends, we discussed the enablers for these mega trends, what really needs to be done at the back end. But in terms of the policy support that you need for these mega trends, are there gaps that you think can be addressed? What's your sense there?
Ultimately, the government of India has allocated about 400 crores for skill development. But I still believe that in many areas we are still lagging. For example, 5G got introduced more than a year ago in certain parts of the world. We still haven't given the spectrum on 5G. Number two, we're talking about the AI use cases, but how many of our 800 universities actually have AI programs? I think it's a basic question. So there is a lot more to be done for our domestic manufacturing to gain a rightful share, which is $1 trillion. For Indian IT industry to get a respectful share of aiming for $500 billion. I believe that the government has started the dialogue, but I think we need to convert it into reality a lot faster, because there is so much to be done and there is so little time.
Right. My final question to you, Mr. Gurnani, so far in the last 2-3 decades, the IT industry has been defined by exports. Even today, if the size of the industry is $194 billion, a majority of it will be driven by exports. Do you think we will see the share of domestic going up significantly in the next decade or decade, as NASSCOM calls it? Is it going to be a tipping point for India?
The answer is yes and no. The reason it is yes and no is that most of us have only started touching or scratching the surface. And, whatever we are today, it is mainly because of the experiences overseas. But if you start looking at, we all celebrated the wonderful management of pandemic. We all are conscious that one of the companies actually did their own R&D and produced a vaccine. But I think unless we make a heroes of those product and platform manufacturers, unless we actually recognize that one company probably did mass volumes, but one company actually did the R&D locally, and in the same 10 months, it's a mindset change. And if we are able to change that mindset, I know Prime Minister wants it because that's the reason why he has given that slogan of Atmanirbhar. But we as industry, we as academia, we as technology providers need to keep pace with those dreams.
Right. On that optimistic note, Mr. Gurnani, thank you very much for joining us on this special session of the NTLF, putting into perspective those 3 crucial trends that the IT industry will be watching out for closely. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you, Chandra. Thank you. It was good fun.
Thank you, Chandra and CP, for a great conversation and session. Exciting times for us for sure. With the demand and spend on digitization going up, this session brought to the fore the relevance and importance of these tech trends that will shape reality in many, many ways.